Okay, we're doing another Mark video and we're getting ready to introduce Mark's Rapture keywords, and it's going to turn out to be pretty important. I'm pretty surprised. The first word that is used in the New Testament for the rapture is TAXU. The pastor spent a lot of time explaining how this word is used, and I'm not going to go through it as much as he does, but I've got to cover it. This is a word actually that Mark doesn't use in a rapture context. This word can be used inside or outside a rapture context. In the left-hand side, what we're looking at the start are the New Testament uses of the word. It's used often in the Old Testament as well, and that's going to end up being important. But right now we're looking at the New Testament use of the word, so you can get a sense of what it means. The word here translated in English as quickly is what's meant by TAXU, but unfortunately the English semantic range of quickly always gives you the impression of a short duration of time between event A and event B, and it's often unfortunately translated as soon. That's not what the word really means, and this particular verse helps you understand what it really means. See, it says, make friends quickly with your opponent while you're with him on the way. And the word here translated way is really the Greek word odos. It means road. Okay? So he's saying, hi, you're the guy that your opponent wants to get you arrested. And so you're literally on the road with your opponent and the police to the court. So this word translated way should be translated road. And so while you're on the road, on the way to court, under arrest, make friends with your opponent so that he won't hand you over to the judge and you'd be thrown in prison. Specifically, this is thinking of the concept of debt prison. The whole idea of we owe a debt to God and we're opponents with God, and God's going to have to throw us in jail. So while we're down here on the road of life, let's make friends with God so you don't go to hell. That's the backdrop. You know, everything in the Bible is very, what do you want to call it, colorful. The Bible specializes in colorful wording to make it more memorable. And unfortunately for us in modern times, we don't appreciate that. So we're always confused when we read Bible text. All right, but he's drawing an analogy between the debt prison that we're going to get thrown in because we owe God and we won't accept what he accepts as payment, and we want to pay with our own good deeds instead. So make friends with God now because you're on your way to prison. That's the point he's making. And this is Christ talking. All right. So he's using the word quickly here to say act with haste. In other words, the word TAXU, okay, means to act with haste, an action undertaken quickly. Not necessarily how long an interval expires between event A, you're being down here now, and the time B that he arrives. When he arrives, the way he arrives is TAXU, quickly. Okay, and we're going to see that in hopefully later passages when I cover this. Because there are three rapture keywords that have to do with speed of arrival and nextness and nearness. And Mark uses two of them, but not this one. Okay, and it's a question, why doesn't he use this one? All right, and I'm going to have to cover that in some detail. But just understand that the word TAXU means suddenly with surprise, suddenly without prior warning, as my pastor would put it. And it's especially used as a military adverb, okay, for a surprise attack. All right? Now these other words, these other verses in the New Testament, and also in the Old, but I got to cover the Old afterwards. In the New Testament, it's again quickly. In other words, the action you're undertaking is with haste. The person doing the action is doing it with haste. When the Lord comes for the rapture, he's doing it immediately. His action is immediate, quick. not how long it takes between today and when he comes. When he comes, the day he comes, he's going to do it fast, without prior warning. That's the essence of the word TAXU. All right? So here it's used in its generic sense. Do your action with haste. Okay? Tell him that he's risen from the dead. And then again, they did do it. In other words, Mark 28:8 is saying they did it as fast as they were told to do it. And then here's the lone use of it in Mark. Okay? And it's translated soon afterwards. All right? In other words, but that's not a good, I mean, that's good English idiom, but in better, maybe better idiom, it's like he won't be, if you speak nicely of somebody, you're going to hesitate before you speak ill of them. All right? It's just natural human nature. Once you say something nice, it's kind of hard to immediately say something bad. So if this translated soon afterward, and that's good modern English idiom. Okay, it's not, that's obvious to anybody, but TAXU doesn't mean soon. It means quickly. It means, it's the opposite of hesitating. It's the opposite of something that's long and drawn out. It's like bang. That's TAXU. Bang. That was TAXU. All right, so Mark's not using this in a rapture context, obviously. Okay, he's talking about, you know, somebody who's exorcising demons in Christ's name. So it's not a rapture context. So as you can see, the word can be used outside a rapture context. That's what we're introducing first. Okay, and then here in Luke, okay, again, the speed of action. All right, the prodigal son, parable of the prodigal son. Do this action quickly. All right, and then here again in John, Mary got up quickly. Okay, James, okay, quickly versus slow. An action undertaken quickly versus slow. And that's where quick is here. See, this is quick to hear in Greek, and it's translated quick to hear in English. Very easy. Okay. Right? But now, it's used in a rapture context. It is exclusively used in a rapture context in Revelation. And in Revelation, what you have to understand is that the revelation is being given before the tribulation occurs. And so there are these little asides. In drama, they call it an aside. In other words, the story is playing, the narrative is going, and then there is an actor who interrupts or turns to the audience and gives them an aside. That's a frequent use that Shakespeare makes in Othello, where Iago is suddenly turning aside to the audience, especially in the Kenneth Branagh production. He suddenly turns to the audience and he gives you an aside about what he's saying to the other actor on the stage. Okay? That's called an aside, and it's done very frequently in Revelation because what's happening is the interruption. This is an interruption. Okay? The reason for the interruption is to tell you what lesson you should learn from the action on stage. Because, you know, John is given the revelation about how the tribulation is going to play out in the end of history. And so there are interruptions to tell you what lesson, remember this part of it. Remember what lesson you're supposed to learn. Okay, so that's done in Revelation 2:16. And when it says quickly, it means he's coming instantly. Okay, and we're going to see why, you know, the NT writers are using this when I get to Matthew 24, because that's the origin, the semantic origin of using this. Although in Matthew 24, Christ doesn't use this word. He uses the other two keywords that Mark will use. Okay? So quickly means right away, bang. That's what you should understand. It doesn't tell you anything about the interval of time between today and the day of arrival. It's the method of arrival that's bam. Okay? Revelation 3:11. Again, see, it's a refrain. I come instantly. I come, you know, hastily. Hastily is probably a better translation because hastily is what it means in the Old Testament. Because this is very much used in the Old Testament, as we're going to see. And then Revelation 11, third woe is coming hastily. Now see there, that's not a rapture usage, but it's got the same idea. In other words, the third wall, this is the third demon army coming. And, the three demon armies were introduced in Revelation 11, and the first two events of the demon armies are outlined in Revelation 9, and then the outcome of the second demon army, which is the killing of the two witnesses, has finally completed being depicted on stage, and now you're recalled back to, you know, the third demon army coming out at the end of Revelation 9, because now it's going to actually come on stage. That's what that means, coming imminently. Okay, and then Revelation, sorry, my mouse just malfunctioned. Okay, then the next one is Revelation 22:7. Now, when you're in Revelation 22, that is the epilogue of the play. Revelation is a 4-act play. First act is church, second act is tribulation, third act is the millennium, and the fourth act is eternity. And this is after the play has finished. This is a very common drama technique in Greek drama, where you have to close the play with an epilogue, a moral that you take away with you. Classical Greek drama, you should be able to find that, you know, in any place that teaches Greek drama, because that's exactly how Revelation is styled, as a 4-act Greek play. Okay, so there's the epilogue beginning. Behold, I'm coming hastily. And then here's the injunction. Blessed is he who heeds the words of this book. And of course, by implication, cursed are you if you don't listen to him. All right? And then again, he's closing it now. I'm coming quickly. See, it's a refrain. Then he's adding to it now. He's reminding you another thing. My reward is with me. In other words, when I arrive, and this is talking about the rapture now, not the second advent. Okay? My reward is with me to render every man according to what he has done. An additional reason to remember and learn from the book. And then one more time. Yes, I'm coming quickly. In other words, John is acknowledging the refrain. Okay? He's quoting it first, and then he acknowledges it here. Okay? And if you can read the Greek, you'll see on the right, you know, it's an actual total phrase. It's erkomaitaku. See? This is the phrase that keeps on being said in Greek. All right, so it's got a very specific usage, and it means the rapture. It means pre-trib. There is no other way to interpret it. And now we're going to go and find out why. Okay, here we are in Matthew 24, which is the quintessential passage on the tribulation. And again, because Scripture is omnidirectionally written so that it can link up to all other parts of the Bible, and because it's meant to be colorful and memorable and economic in word and phrase, there is, to modern readers, a great deal of misinterpretation that understandably goes on, okay? Before I get into this, I just want to say I honestly never did care, and in many ways still don't, about whether tribulation was a true doctrine or not, but it is. Okay, like it or lump it. And I always think that I was sort of punished by God because I didn't care. When I went through my pastor's exegesis of Revelation, which he was doing every single day, he was exegeting Revelation verse by verse, during the very years that Edward P.F. number 123 claims he was there. Well, I was there. I never saw him. Church wasn't that big. Okay, but he says he never learned anything under that pastor, never learned any Greek. Okay, well, how could he never learn Greek if he actually went to class, since every day that pastor was exegeting Revelation verse by verse? Okay? So that's his punishment, that he's lying about it, or else he slept through all the classes. But I had my own punishment too, because I was totally bored by this, all right? So about 20 years after the fact, after I'd had all that exegesis, this is how I learned how to read and write in Greek, was sitting under that pastor every day. All right. My own punishment was that I was so bored by it, I didn't pay much attention to it. I believed it. I was sure it was true. I saw the proof. Like I said, that's how I learned to read and write in Greek. After 18 months of sitting under a guy for, every single day, 7 times a week he taught, 6 days a week, but 7 times, twice on Sunday. You learn it. You can't help but learn the Greek if you just pay attention. So I was bored, and 20 years later, I had to actually go through this doctrine. And I spent the better part of the last 11 years explaining how you can prove pre-trib rapture from the New Testament and its references to the Old. And I'm still in the process of doing that. So if you want, you can look at my Lord versus Satan Thinking Out Loud series, which begins with Lord versus Satan 1.htm. You can just Google on that and find it. And it'll take you about a year to read the 2,000 pages of stuff that I've done on this. Or you could just at least give me the benefit of the doubt that I have done my homework. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't get punished, okay? Because this is not, I'm not interested in Bible prophecy. I should be. And I got punished for not being. So what I'm going to tell you has a lot behind it. And if you want, you can hear the pastor yourself, Daily Exegete Revelation. If you just go to rbtheme.org and order the Revelation series, it's 1981 through 1985, daily. It's recorded. You can hear it yourself. 4 years of daily exegesis. Good luck. I mean, I want to say there's like 2,000 lessons or something. What's 360 times 4? That's how many lessons there are. So what I'm going to tell you is part of all that. Okay? Take it or don't, believe it or don't, argue, that's fine. But I'm not married to this doctrine, but it is true, whether I liked it or not. So here we go. He's saying, okay, they had, been praising the building and the temple and all that good stuff. All right, and he's saying that the stones will be thrown down. And every verse in the, all the NT writers track to Matthew on that. Okay, this one is the header passage that all the others track to, as you'll see when I later get that far in the synoptics. And so he's saying, okay, well, this is going to be how it's going to happen, between now and then, between now and the tribulation. Okay. Now here's your key phrase. He's using the same style as Daniel. Daniel launches into the tribulation sequence in Daniel 11:36. Daniel 11:35 takes you up to Antiochus IV Epiphanes and his defeat. Then suddenly, in order to make a parallel, Gabriel starts talking about the tribulational Jewish Antichrist versus the Maccabees Jewish Antichrists of the day of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. The Jewish Antichrists back then were Jonathan, okay, and Judas was okay, but Jonathan was the guy who took the bribe, and you see that in Maccabees, First Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 10. Chapter 10, verse 1, and chapter 11 is where that the whole story starts. Okay, and then in Daniel it switches to the actual tribulation in Daniel 11:36. Christ is doing the same thing. Birth pangs. He's setting up a parallel. Yeah, there's a parallel. Yeah, there's a kind of tribulation that precedes. Okay, and this is his changeover. See, they will deliver you over to tribulation. Greek word is thlipsis. Okay, and so you're going to experience a kind of tribulation while you're here. And you'll get killed and hated and everybody because of my name. Okay, this is his segue into the tribulation. That's why it says at that time, not at this time. So there's a sort of overlap, okay, between the actual tribulation, which is actually introduced in verse 9, and what goes on before. And this is kind of, why the preterists get what they get. I can empathize with preterism. I'm not, against them. The trouble is, and I've spent a lot of time on this, is that there are 2 tribulational sevens, not one. And because scholars are being completely stupid and using lunar years when they account the Bible instead of the solar years that the Bible mandates from Exodus 12 forward, because the so-called scholars are using lunar years, they always miss the second 7 when they do the 490 in Daniel 9. And I've spent a lot of time on that. I'm not going to spend that again here. That's the reason why preterism gets to hang its hat, is they're doing their accounting wrong. But I got to tell you, honey, the dispensationalists are just as stupid. You never use lunar years in the Bible. The Jews use lunar years. They're dead wrong. Bible never authorizes lunar years for Israel. Exodus 12 is based on a solar year. You can't get to your birthday unless you use a solar year. Bible always uses birthdays and anniversaries, and you can't do that on a lunar year basis. 1 Chronicles 24 is a 24-hour day. That's why there are 24 priestly courses. Now, maybe one day the scholars will wake up and smell the coffee. I can't wait that long, so I'm going on now. This begins the tribulational passage. And when it says, he who endures to the end will be saved, that's echoed in Hebrews 10. And it doesn't mean saved from hell. It means delivered from death. In other words, these are the people, if you keep on believing, you're going to obey the commands he's going to issue after this, verse 13. You're going to do what he says, and you're going to save your life. He's not talking about salvation. He's talking about whether or not they kill you in the tribulation. So pay up, pay close attention. All right? Here's the precursor. The gospel of the kingdom will be preached to the whole world. That's echoing Daniel, okay? Then the end will come. That echoes Daniel, special Daniel 12. And that's what he's actually referring to here. When you see the abomination of desolation, he's linking up Daniel 9:27 to Daniel 12, verses 11 and 12, which is measuring from the end of the tribulation. The 1,290 days and the 1,335 days are measuring backwards, daily, from the tribulation, so you know how to count. Same mechanism as was used in Hebrew accounting for the millennium, which I cover extensively in my Psalm 90 playlist. They always reckon from an end point. Not from a beginning point, from an end point. You find out what's the beginning by knowing what the end is. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Here's the end point. If you've gotten to this point and you hear about this, run. Flee. In other words, he's talking mid-Trib at this point. Just get out of there as fast as possible. Quickly. Okay? Now, so it's real obvious, we're in Daniel 9:27. You have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to know. Okay, Great Tribulation is a key phrase in the Old Testament for the time of Jacob's trouble. It is the last 3.5 years. Okay, remember, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but in my Psalm 90 and other playlists where I talk about how God governs time, there's a 54-year credit owed to Gentiles, and it turned into 57 years owing to the difference between David's death age and the time when Solomon actually began building the temple. That added 3.5 years to the credit, so it's a total of 57 years. That also ties back to Noah's 57 days before and after his birthday. The flood begins 57 days after his birthday in the LXX. The Hebrew text is corrupted. And 57 days after his birthday, he exits the ark. So he was in the ark for a total of a year. Okay? That is echoed in 57 days in the Mosaic Law. Period of Jubilee is 50 years. The tribulation echoes off Passion Week, which is 7 days, and then that equals 7 years. Okay? That's where all this accounting is coming from. The last 3.5 of which are payback on the delay of starting the first temple. Okay? So it's a total of 57. And the last 7 years are reserved in Daniel 9:27. Okay, if you've been listening to my other videos, this will make quick sense to you. If you haven't, I'm sorry if you're muddled. Okay? So that's the tribulation. Now, during that time, during that 3.5 years, if anyone says Christ is here, because everybody's going to be looking for people who believe in Christ to kill him, during the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. So he's warning. Don't listen if they say I've come back. Okay, and now he evokes Zechariah 4. Okay, and here the word immediately is the word that Mark is going to use, and that Matthew already started with. It's also translated straight, and it's Greek word. Let me give it up to you so you can see it. Whoops, that's the wrong verse. Okay, euthus. Okay, see if you look down here, euthus and euthus, they're synonyms. When they're just, it's only a grammatical difference between their usage. Okay, sometimes you use euthus because you need the extra syllable. Okay, straight away, immediate, forthwith. Okay, make his path straight. Remember how we started in the synoptics? Matthew 1, make his path straight. Mark plays on that, Luke plays on that. Okay, the Greek word is euthus, or euthus. Alright, that's the word here translated immediately. Alright, and then sun will be darkened. That's playing on, well, it's in Zephaniah also. It's playing on Zechariah 4, but they don't list it here. How come they don't list it here? Because it's in Zechariah 4 where it talks about the day becoming, he arrives on a day arrives at nighttime on a day that had all darkness. But I don't see the verse listed in the TSK database here. Okay, well, you're just going to have to look in Zechariah 4 and the rest of Zechariah to see that. Okay, because I don't want to spend too much time. These are all the prophecies on it. All right, but the TSK database is not displaying them all. It's in Zechariah. Zechariah 14. I'm sorry, not 4. Zechariah 14. All right, but here's the point. This is the second rapture keyword. All right, immediately. And again, it has a regular non-rapture context. Here, it has a context of the second advent. Suddenly after. In other words, this is on the very last day of the tribulation. The sun will be dark and the moon will not give its light. Okay? And I'm really surprised they're not quoting Zechariah 14. Okay. Pardon me, I'm trying to read in the lower right-hand corner, you got all the parallel verses that the Treasury of Scripture database thinks apply, but they're not listing the one that applies the most, which is Zechariah 14. Okay, so you have to look up Zechariah chapter 14 on your own. Okay? According to Zephaniah, but not Zechariah. Well, anyway, I don't want to make another digression. You understand, this is why I'm using the NASB text. The caps are talking about other verses that are being quoted. It's a very handy feature of the NASB translation. That's why I use it. Okay? And the keyword, our second rapture keyword, is euthus. Alright? Which is Mark's main keyword. He uses it 42 times. Alright? So let's go back to the context of the passage. Because Mark is going to start talking about this specifically. This part. Okay? In Mark, after Mark 11:3, the last time Mark uses this word immediately is in Mark 11:3, and then he doesn't use it again until Mark 14:43. Now, until that point, he'd been using it at least twice every chapter. So he used it a total 42 times. But between Mark 11:3 and Mark 14:43, he doesn't use it at all. Okay, that's a big red flag. And the text that's in that section between Mark 11:3 and Mark 14:43, when Judas kisses Christ, is this. This is the text that he's talking about. So that's a big heads up that instead of using euthus, which is translated immediately here, which is Mark's big fancy keyword that scholars have talked about for centuries, he suddenly stops using it, but in this text. All right? Now, the second, or the third, okay, so our first rapture keyword was TAXU, and we're going to see the Old Testament uses of that in the next increment. Our second rapture keyword is euthus, which is Mark's favorite, all right, which is right here. It means straight away. Oh, come on. Straight away, forthwith, all right? And then the third one is in verse 30. Sorry. Is it 29? Okay, well, wait a minute. Right here. The third rapture keyword is here. And Mark uses this twice. Matthew uses it more than twice. Engus. See? You spell it E-G-G-U-S. But you pronounce the two G's together as an N-G. So you say engus. Or engus. Engus. Probably. Okay. That means near. It means right next to. Okay? And, you know, this is Thayer. You can look at Thayer online. Okay? But it means right next to. And, of course, that's exactly what this verse says. He is near, right at the door. The word translated near is engus. All right? It isn't necessarily near in time. That's the big, see, that's the Strong's entry at the bottom. Okay? Near in time is almost never what it means. It means next in sequence. Next. Okay, well, the difference between event A and B can be thousands of years. But the next prophesied thing, or the next logical thing, or the next topic is signified by engus. Next. It means next. Okay? Right at the door. Okay, yeah, but a door? Now think about this. It can't be too difficult. You have a building. You have a door at one end and a door at the other end. And the thing can be standing right outside the door. Okay, but the door isn't open. Moreover, how long is the building? What if time is the building of time and you're at the other end of the building in time? Okay, he's still standing right at the door, but it could be the other door, and in the door of time it could be very far away. But this is still true. He is near right at the door. Okay, but which door relative to where you are? You see that? If there's only two doors, then the next door from the door you're at, if you're at the other door, the next door is at the other end of the building. Okay, and it might take a really long time to get there, to answer the door. You see that? But he's still right at the door. You get that? Okay, so we have now introduced our three keywords. I'm going to spend a lot of time. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on engus. I'll spend some. Okay, because that's also frequently in the Old Testament also. And we also saw our second keyword, euthus, aka euthus, which is down here. See? Here's euthus. And here's euthus. Very common word in Matthew, somewhat common in Luke, the most common in Mark. Okay, and the question is, why does he do it that way? Why does Mark repeat this? It's not considered elegant in Greek. It's not considered good Greek if you repeat the same word too often or in too close proximity the last time you said it. And all the scholars know that, and there have been a lot of, one guy even wrote his dissertation on this, a guy named Rod Decker, and a link to his dissertation will be in the video description. You know, and a dissertation is supposed to be a survey of the scholarship on the question of the dissertation. Okay? Why does Mark do this? And there are all kinds of opinions. All right? And I guess what I'm doing is showing you what I think it is. And then you evaluate it any way you want or just ignore the video. Who cares? All right? So that's what we're going to come up on the next increment. We're going to go back to TAXU, and then we're going to come back here and spend time on Mark's use of euthus, and then we're going to cover engus And we're going to cover all the uses in the Bible just quickly so that you got your own survey. And then you can decide for yourself why Mark's doing this. And I submit to you the rapture keywords, and he uses it or omits it to track the reasons for the tribulation and its imminency. As we'll find out, start to find out in the next increment when we go back to TAXU.